I still remember the exact moment my life shifted, though at the time, it felt like nothing more than an ordinary introduction in an ordinary office. My name is Emily Carter, and back then I was just settling into my new position at a mid-sized company in downtown Chicago. The office was bright with glass walls, buzzing with the low hum of ringing phones and the constant tapping of keyboards. I had told myself it was just another job, just another chapter in my professional life. But then came Michael Reynolds. He was already working there when I arrived, part of the same department. I met him on my very first morning, right after my manager introduced me to the team. My manager pointed across the room, his voice cheerful. "Emily, this is Michael. You'll be working closely with him on a few projects." Michael stood up from his desk and walked over to me. He wasn't in a rush. His pace was calm, steady, confident in a way that immediately drew my attention. He extended his hand and smiled. God, that smile. It was the kind of smile that doesn't just touch the lips, but radiates through the eyes, disarming you before you even know what's happening. "Welcome, Emily," he said, his voice warm and low. "If you ever need anything, or if the work gets confusing, just ask me. I'll be glad to help." It was such a simple gesture, yet it carved itself into me. I could feel my pulse quicken, as though my body had recognized something my mind wasn't ready to name. I shook his hand, forcing myself to look composed, but deep down I was unsettled, captivated even. I wasn't someone who fell easily for appearances, and yet, in that moment, something inside me whispered that nothing would be the same again. The first days passed quickly, and our routine began to take shape. The office was arranged in a way that placed Michael and me across from each other, with only a wide aisle between our desks. It meant that every time I lifted my head from my computer, my eyes seemed to land on him. Sometimes he was already looking at me, and when our gazes met, neither of us looked away immediately. Instead, there was that split second of quiet recognition, a silent spark exchanged across the room. I tried to dismiss it. After all, we were colleagues. I told myself it was just the charm of someone who was friendly and approachable. But the truth is, I felt something stir every time his eyes found mine. And the more it happened, the more undeniable it became. Michael had a way about him. He was dedicated at work, focused, but there was always a trace of lightness in his expression, as if he carried humor and warmth in his pocket, ready to be shared. He laughed easily, and I would find myself secretly listening to the sound of his voice during conversations with others. I learned small things. He liked black coffee, he always hummed softly while reading long reports, and he had the habit of running his hand through his hair when he was thinking hard. Little details, ordinary to anyone else, but to me, they felt like clues to a mystery I was desperate to solve. And then there was me. Outside of work, my life was simple. Quiet evenings at home, a handful of close friends, books stacked on my nightstand that I swore I would finish one day. I wasn't searching for anything in particular. I had convinced myself that love could wait, that maybe it wasn't meant to be the center of my life right now. Yet, every time Michael's smile reached me across that room, I felt something crack open inside. A hunger, a longing I didn't know I still carried. Still, I held back. I was cautious, guarded, aware that feelings born in the workplace could complicate everything. But my heart didn't listen to logic. It kept rushing forward, faster each day, while my mind tried to pull on the brakes. It was during one of those endless afternoons that I finally admitted it to myself. I had been typing away, eyes fixed on the screen, when I felt the weight of someone's gaze. I lifted my head, and there he was again, looking directly at me. He didn't look away this time. Instead, his lips curved into that same devastating smile, soft and deliberate, as if he knew exactly the effect it had on me. And in that instant, I knew. Something had begun, something that neither of us had spoken out loud, yet both of us could feel. A story had started with nothing more than a look. That was the first glance, the moment everything changed. There is a peculiar kind of silence that lives between two people who feel something they cannot yet name. It isn't empty. No, it is heavy, charged, filled with currents that run deeper than words. That was the silence Michael and I began to share. In the weeks that followed, our daily lives at the office unfolded like any ordinary routine. Emails, deadlines, the endless shuffle of papers and conversations about numbers, projects, clients. Yet beneath that ordinary rhythm pulsed something extraordinary, a secret fire that neither of us could ignore. Every day, I would sit at my desk, determined to keep my focus on the glow of my computer screen, to bury myself in the tasks in front of me. And yet, like clockwork, my gaze would wander, drawn as if by gravity to the figure across the aisle. Sometimes Michael was too engrossed in his own work to notice, but more often than not, I would find him already watching me. Those moments stretched longer with each passing day. He would hold my gaze just long enough to make my breath falter, then look away, leaving me both restless and exhilarated. It was dangerous, that dance of eyes and silences, because no one else could see it, yet inside me, it was consuming everything. Michael had a subtle way of communicating without words, the slight lift of his eyebrows when something amused him, the barely perceptible tilt of his head when I made a small mistake in my notes, as if saying, "Don't worry, I've got you." And always, always that smile, gentle, confident, laced with warmth. It wasn't flirtation in the obvious sense. It was something deeper, something that suggested recognition, as though he knew a truth about me that I hadn't yet spoken aloud. I would leave the office every evening carrying his image with me, like a secret. On the train ride home, I would replay our wordless exchanges, dissect every detail. The way his eyes softened when they lingered on mine. The way his laughter seemed to find me across the room even when I wasn't part of the conversation. It was intoxicating, yet it left me in turmoil. Because, of course, there were boundaries. This was work. And I was cautious, deeply aware of the risks of confusing professional life with personal feelings. I reminded myself of this every morning as I dressed for the day, staring at my reflection in the mirror, rehearsing a composure I rarely felt once I stepped into that office. Still, the fire grew. There was one afternoon, particularly gray and rainy, when the office lights flickered against the storm outside. I remember dropping a pen that rolled beneath my desk. As I leaned down to retrieve it, I felt his presence before I even saw him. Michael was suddenly there, crouched on the other side, holding out the pen he had already picked up. Our hands touched as I took it from him, just for a second, the lightest brush of skin against skin. But it was enough. My chest tightened, my pulse surged, and for a moment I forgot where we were. He looked at me then, not smiling, not joking, just holding my eyes with an intensity that made me want to forget every rule I had set for myself. That touch, that look, it said what neither of us dared to speak. After that, everything felt heightened. Coffee breaks turned into moments of stolen glances. Passing by his desk meant catching the faint trace of his cologne, and it lingered with me long after. Even the simple act of hearing my name in his voice sent a ripple through me. "Emily, could you check this?" Such ordinary words, yet spoken by him, they felt like music. I began to realize that I wasn't the only one caught in this quiet storm. He mirrored my hesitation, my restraint, and yet there were flashes, small slips where his emotions peeked through. The way his smile lingered longer when it was just the two of us. The way his tone softened when he spoke my name. It was maddening, this limbo of unspoken desire. Every fiber of me longed to cross the invisible line, to reach out and claim what I felt was already ours. But fear held me back. Fear of what others might say, fear of shattering something before it even had the chance to begin. So we continued our secret dance, our silent fire. Outwardly, colleagues like any others. Inwardly, two hearts circling each other, waiting for the moment when hesitation would finally give way to something undeniable. I didn't know then how quickly that moment would come. I didn't know that soon, silence would no longer be enough. Fridays in the office had their own rhythm. People worked, but with one eye already on the weekend. Conversations lighter, laughter more frequent, an unspoken anticipation hanging in the air. That particular Friday felt different for me. The storm of silent glances between Michael and me had been building for weeks, and my heart seemed unwilling to settle into the casual flow of the day. Every time I caught sight of him across the room, the pulse in my chest betrayed me. I had almost convinced myself it would remain this way forever, an endless game of hidden fire, never moving beyond stolen glances. But as the afternoon wore on, I sensed something in him, a restlessness. He would glance at me, look down at his desk, run a hand through his hair, then glance at me again. His usual calmness was replaced by something I hadn't seen before. Nerves. It was nearly the end of the day when it happened. I was closing a file, gathering my things, when I noticed Michael standing just beside my desk. For a second, I couldn't breathe. He wasn't smiling, not at first. He looked almost hesitant, as though he had rehearsed something and was now unsure whether to speak. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Emily," he said, his voice lower than usual. Are you doing anything after work today?" I froze. My heart raced so fast I was afraid he would hear it. I tried to keep my tone casual, as though my insides weren't already trembling. "Not really. Why?" He hesitated, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "I thought maybe we could grab a drink, somewhere close, just to talk, you know?" Just to talk. Such simple words, but in them I heard everything unspoken, everything restrained between us. 1,000 thoughts crashed through my head. What if this was a mistake? What if people from the office saw us? What if I was imagining everything? But louder than all those doubts was the undeniable truth. I wanted this. I wanted him. I smiled, feeling my cheeks warm. I'd like that. Relief washed over his face, and then that familiar smile, the one that had undone me since the very first day, spread across his lips. "Great," he said softly, his eyes holding mine for a beat too long before he stepped back, giving me space to breathe again. The rest of the afternoon was unbearable. My concentration shattered completely, every tick of the clock pulling me closer to whatever awaited us. I tapped my pen against the desk, stared at the screen without reading a single word, and counted the minutes as if they were hours. When the end of the day finally came, I felt electricity in the air. I slipped my bag over my shoulder and walked toward the exit, my heart hammering. Michael was already there, waiting just outside the glass doors of the building. He leaned casually against the frame, but his eyes lit up the moment they found me. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded, though I could barely manage the breath to answer. We walked side by side down the busy Chicago street, the city alive with the energy of Friday night. Neon signs flickered to life, taxis honked impatiently, people hurried past us laughing, already swept into their weekend. Yet for me, the noise of the city faded. All I could feel was the nearness of him, the way his shoulder brushed mine occasionally, the rhythm of his footsteps beside me, steady and sure. We didn't speak much as we walked, but the silence was full, charged. My nerves battled with excitement, 1,000 butterflies taking flight inside me. And still, underneath it all, there was a quiet certainty. This was the beginning of something neither of us could turn away from. When we reached the small bar tucked into the corner of the street, he pulled the door open and let me step inside first. Warm light and the faint hum of music welcomed us. As we found a table in the back, away from the noise, I caught the look on his face. It wasn't casual anymore. It wasn't just a friendly drink. It was something more, something neither of us had dared to admit until now. That night, time itself seemed to quicken, as if the universe had been waiting impatiently for us to take this step. My heart knew it. Nothing would ever be the same again. The bar was softly lit, the kind of place where conversations folded into the low hum of music and the clinking of glasses. Candles flickered on each table, casting delicate shadows against the walls. It was warm, intimate, perfect for what neither of us had dared to name until that moment. Michael and I sat across from each other in a booth tucked into the corner. At first, our words came easily. Safe, ordinary words. We talked about work, about the projects piling up, about the weather, even about the chaos of traffic that day. But beneath the surface, every word trembled with something else. I could feel it in the pauses between sentences, in the way his eyes lingered on me longer than necessary, in the nervous way I twisted the napkin in my hands. We weren't really talking about deadlines or weather. We were circling something greater, something fragile and inevitable, waiting for the courage to break through. After a while, I stopped pretending to follow the conversation. All I could focus on was him, the way the candlelight softened the lines of his face, the warmth in his eyes, the slight curve of his lips as he watched me. I realized then that silence had become our truest language. We laughed at something. I can't even remember what. But the laughter faded quickly, leaving behind a charged stillness. He leaned forward, elbows resting on the table, his gaze fixed on me. I felt myself leaning in, as though pulled by a force stronger than reason. And then, for the first time that night, his hand brushed mine across the table. A spark shot through me, quick and undeniable. My breath caught, and for a heartbeat, the world fell away. His voice was low, almost uncertain, but there was no mistaking the longing in it. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Instead, I met his eyes, letting him see everything I had tried so hard to hide. The desire, the fear, the surrender. He hesitated only a second longer before he closed the space between us. His lips found mine in a kiss that was both tentative and overwhelming, as if we had both been holding our breath for weeks and finally exhaled. The bar, the voices, the music, all of it vanished. Time slowed to nothing but that kiss. His hand moved to my cheek, tender, steady, anchoring me to the moment. I leaned into him, my fingers gripping his sleeve as though afraid he might disappear. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a confession, a declaration, a promise. For those few endless seconds, the universe narrowed to only us, two souls colliding in the simplest yet most profound way. My heart raced, my body trembled, but beneath it all was a deep, startling calm. This was where I belonged, in that kiss, in that moment with him. When we finally pulled apart, I could still feel his breath mingling with mine, the warmth of him so close it felt impossible to move away. His eyes searched mine, almost as if asking a question he didn't need to speak. I smiled, though my voice was barely a whisper. "Michael." He smiled too then, the kind of smile that holds both relief and awe. And for the first time since the day we met, I allowed myself to stop fighting what had been growing between us. That kiss was more than the start of something. It was a world suspended in time, a world where nothing else existed but us. And deep inside, I knew nothing could ever erase it. That kiss had left me trembling, caught between desire and wonder. When our lips parted, the world still felt like it had shifted on its axis. Everything inside me screamed that this was the beginning of something extraordinary. The rest of the evening at the bar passed in a blur. We talked, we laughed, but now everything was different. There was no more hiding, no more pretending. Each word we exchanged carried an intimacy that hadn't been there before. When he reached across the table to touch my hand again, I didn't pull away. I didn't want to. By the time we stepped outside, the city night was alive with noise, car horns, voices, music spilling from other bars, but for me, it all faded into the background. I felt wrapped in a cocoon of warmth. the echo of his kiss still on my lips. Michael turned to me, his eyes soft but glimmering with something deeper, more urgent. "Let's get out of here," he said, almost casually, though I could feel the weight beneath his words. I nodded. I didn't care where we went, as long as it was with him. We walked to his car, the silence between us no longer awkward, but heavy with anticipation. He opened the door for me, a small gesture that made me smile. Once inside, I leaned back against the seat, my heart racing, my thoughts swirling in every direction. At first, I assumed he was taking me to another place, a quieter bar maybe, or a late-night diner where we could keep talking until morning. But as the minutes passed, I realized he wasn't heading anywhere familiar. The streets grew emptier, the lights of downtown fading behind us. My pulse quickened, but not with excitement, with unease. I turned to him, trying to read his expression in the glow of passing headlights. "Michael, where are we going?" He smiled, though he kept his eyes on the road. "You'll see. Trust me." I wanted to trust him. God, I already did more than I should have. And yet, a knot formed in my stomach as we drove further out. The city noise fell away, replaced by the quiet stretch of highway. Then I saw it. The neon sign glowing in the night, the unmistakable driveway leading into a motel. My breath caught, my chest tightening as realization hit me. He slowed the car, flicked on the signal, and turned in. In that instant, the magic of the night shattered. I froze, unable to hide the shock in my voice. "Michael, no. I can't." He looked at me, genuinely surprised. "Emily, what do you mean? You thought wrong," I interrupted, my words sharp, trembling. "I don't do this, not like this, not on the first night." He tried to laugh it off at first, leaning closer, his voice coaxing. "Come on, it's just us. We've been feeling this for weeks. Why fight it?" But I pulled back, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and disappointment. Because I'm not ready. Because this isn't me. The atmosphere inside the car shifted instantly. The tenderness of earlier vanished, replaced by tension so thick it pressed down on me. He sighed heavily, gripping the wheel, his jaw tight. "So what? You just wanted to tease me? Lead me on?" The words cut deeper than I expected. I stared at him, stunned. No. I wanted this too, but not like this. "I need time, Michael. Doesn't that matter?" For a long moment, he said nothing. The silence between us wasn't the warm, electric silence we had shared before. This was cold, sharp, suffocating. I felt the sting of tears threatening, but I refused to let them fall. All I could think was how quickly everything had changed, from the sweetness of that kiss to the bitterness of this moment. The man who had made me feel like the world had stopped was now making me feel small, pressured, misunderstood. And it broke something inside me. That night was supposed to be perfect. Instead, it left me wondering if I had been wrong all along. The silence that followed that night was nothing like the silence we once shared. It wasn't charged with longing or softened by unspoken words. It was a silence that froze everything between us, sharp and merciless. When Michael pulled the car back onto the highway after I refused to step into the motel, he didn't look at me. His hands were tight on the steering wheel, his jaw locked. The warmth in his eyes, the tenderness that had melted me only hours before, was gone. I tried to speak, to soften the moment, but the words tangled in my throat. And even if I had found them, I doubted he would have listened. He dropped me off in front of my apartment building without a word. No goodbye, no glance in my direction. Just a clipped "we're here," followed by the slam of the driver's side door as he pulled away, leaving me standing there, stunned, humiliated, and unbearably alone. The ache in my chest lingered long after I climbed the stairs to my apartment. I replayed every detail in my head. The kiss that had felt like magic, the drive that had felt like a dream, and then the sudden crash into disappointment. How could something that had felt so right unravel so quickly? The weekend stretched endlessly, haunted by unanswered questions. Should I have given in? Was I being too rigid, too naive? Or was I right to protect myself, even if it cost me everything? I wanted to believe that if what we shared was real, he would understand. But the memory of his cold expression suggested otherwise. By Monday morning, my stomach was in knots. The office, once filled with excitement because of his presence, now felt like a battlefield I was walking into unprepared. I hoped, foolishly, that maybe he would greet me as he had before, that the warmth in his voice would return, that we could pretend nothing had happened. But the moment I stepped inside, I knew I was wrong. Michael didn't even look at me. He walked past my desk as if I weren't there. When I gathered the courage to whisper, "Good morning, Michael," he kept moving, his eyes fixed ahead, his mouth pressed into a line. The rejection was a blow sharper than words could ever be. And it didn't stop there. Day after day, the man who once lingered on my every glance now avoided my eyes entirely. He answered work questions with clipped, detached replies, never lifting his head from the papers in his hand. He never smiled at me, never stopped by my desk, never offered help the way he once had. It was as if I had become invisible. And yet, invisibility didn't shield me from the pain. In fact, it magnified it. Every time he laughed with someone else, every time he leaned over another colleague's desk, I felt the sting of what I had lost. I couldn't escape him. We worked too closely for that. But every interaction was laced with his indifference, a reminder that I had fallen from the place I once held in his world. Inside, I was unraveling. I had thought myself strong, convinced that holding on to my values was the right choice. But his coldness made me doubt everything. At night, lying awake, I tortured myself with what-ifs. What if I had gone inside that motel? Would he be beside me now, holding me instead of pushing me away? Had my refusal drawn a permanent line between us? It wasn't just rejection I felt. It was betrayal. Because the Michael I thought I knew, the one who had smiled at me across the office, who had spoken to me with gentleness, who had kissed me as though I was the only person in the world, had vanished. In his place was someone I barely recognized, and yet, despite everything, I couldn't stop caring. I couldn't silence the ache of wanting him, the desperate hope that the warmth I had seen before wasn't a lie. But as the days turned into weeks and his silence grew heavier, I felt myself drowning in it. The weight of his coldness pressed down on me until I could hardly breathe. I had thought our silence once held fire. Now it was nothing but ice. "2 weeks. That's how long I endured the coldness. 2 weeks of pretending his indifference didn't slice through me every time he walked past without a glance, every time he answered my questions with words clipped so short they barely held meaning. I told myself I would grow used to it, that I could numb myself to his silence. But the truth was, I couldn't. Every day felt like a wound reopening, a reminder of what had begun with such fire and collapsed into frost. I tried to bury myself in work, to lose myself in spreadsheets and reports, but concentration was impossible. Every sound of his chair shifting, every footstep, every faint trace of his cologne when he walked by, it tore at me. I wanted to hate him for it, for punishing me with this cruel indifference, but hate was a luxury I didn't have, because I still cared. God help me, I still cared. It was late one afternoon, the office nearly empty, when I felt it, his gaze. I had been staring at my screen, lost in the usual fog of distraction, when the back of my neck tingled. I lifted my head, and there he was, across the aisle, looking at me. I froze, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might betray me. For a long moment, neither of us moved. His expression wasn't hard, not like it had been. It was uncertain, searching. By the time I blinked, he had looked away as though nothing had happened. But it did happen. It happened again the next day, and again after that. I would catch him watching me, quickly turning his eyes back to his work the moment I noticed. The glances grew more frequent until I began to wonder if perhaps something was shifting. The hope was fragile, but it was enough to keep me alive. Then, one evening, as I was packing my things to leave, a new message appeared in my inbox. The sender's name froze me in place. Michael Reynolds. My breath caught as I clicked it open. The message was short, barely a handful of lines, but each word set my heart trembling. Emily, could we talk? After work today, if you have a moment. There's something I need to say. That was all. But it was enough to make my pulse race. I looked up instinctively, and there he was. Sitting at his desk, his eyes already fixed on me. The moment our gazes met, he didn't look away. He didn't smile either. He just waited, as though holding his breath for my answer. I swallowed hard, then gave the smallest nod. His shoulders eased, and I saw it, the faintest sigh of relief. The rest of the day stretched unbearably long. I couldn't think, couldn't work. My mind ran in circles. What did he want to say? Was it an apology? A goodbye? A confession? I rehearsed every possibility until my chest ached with the weight of them all. When the office finally emptied, I found him waiting near the doors. He looked different that night, less guarded, almost vulnerable. His hands were shoved into his pockets, his gaze shifting nervously as I approached. Emily, he began, his voice softer than I had heard in weeks. I wanted to say I'm sorry. The words stopped me in my tracks. I acted like an idiot that night, he continued quickly, his eyes searching mine. I pushed too hard, too fast, and when you said no, I didn't handle it well. I shut you out, and you didn't deserve that. I can't stop thinking about it, about you. The sincerity in his voice disarmed me. After weeks of coldness, I didn't expect this. My throat tightened, my eyes burning with unshed tears. I wanted to stay strong, to keep my guard up, but part of me had been waiting desperately for this moment. His final words nearly undid me. Emily, I miss you. I don't want silence between us anymore. In that instant, the fragile hope I had carried bloomed into something brighter. The ice was melting, and beneath it, the fire we had almost lost flickered back to life. I stood there just a few steps away from him, and for a moment, I didn't know how to breathe. His apology hung between us, fragile and raw, like glass that could shatter with the wrong touch. Michael looked at me with eyes I hadn't seen in weeks, soft, unguarded, stripped of the coldness that had tormented me. He was no longer the man who had turned away at my greeting or answered me with clipped words. He was the man from the first day, the one whose smile had undone me, whose warmth had felt like home. Emily, he said again, his voice low, almost trembling. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I need you to know how sorry I am. I let my pride get in the way. I let frustration make me cruel, and I hate myself for it. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Weeks of pain, of doubting myself, of nights spent wondering if I had been foolish to hold on to my values, they all pressed against me at once. He took a step closer, careful, as though afraid I might run. I can't stop thinking about you. Every day, every hour. I tried to bury it, but it's there. It's always been there since the first time I saw you. And the more I pushed you away, the more I hated myself. Because the truth is, Emily, I don't want distance. I don't want coldness. I want you." The words cut through me with equal parts relief and fear. My heart wanted to believe them, to throw itself recklessly back into his arms. But my mind whispered caution, reminding me of how quickly tenderness had turned to bitterness before. "Michael," I finally managed, my voice unsteady, "you hurt me. You made me feel invisible. Do you have any idea what that did to me?" His shoulders sagged, and for a second, he looked almost broken. "I know, and I regret it more than I can say. You deserved better than the way I treated you. I thought—" He stopped, ran a hand through his hair, frustration etched on his face. "I thought I'd lost you already, and instead of fighting for you, I let my pride wall me off. I thought, if I couldn't have you on my terms, I'd rather have nothing. But I was wrong. So wrong." He met my eyes again, desperate now. "It's not about terms. It's not about rushing. It's about you. About us. I'd wait as long as it takes if it means I get to keep you in my life." My throat tightened, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. He sounded sincere. So sincere it frightened me, because sincerity makes you vulnerable. To forgive him would mean opening myself up again, risking the same wound if he ever turned cold once more. But in his voice, I heard something different this time. Not just desire, not just pride, but humility. A man stripped bare of excuses, finally willing to admit his flaws. I shook my head slightly, more at myself than at him. "You don't understand how hard it was, watching you every day, pretending you didn't even see me. You made me question everything, myself, my choices, even whether I was worth respecting." "Don't say that," he said quickly, his voice breaking. "Don't ever question your worth. You're the one who reminded me what respect means. You're the one who stopped me from becoming someone I wouldn't even recognize. That night, I was selfish, I was blind, and you were right to say no. You were right to wait. If anything, it showed me the kind of woman you are. Strong, principled, someone who deserves more than just impulse. You deserve patience. You deserve love that lasts." The tears slipped free then, no matter how hard I tried to hold them back. His words weren't perfect. They couldn't erase the pain, but they reached me, touched the part of me that had been aching for weeks. I whispered, my voice fragile, "How do I know it won't happen again? That you won't freeze me out the next time I say something you don't want to hear?" He stepped closer still, so near I could feel the warmth of him, though he didn't touch me. His voice was steady, almost solemn. "Because I've already lived what it's like without you, Emily, and it was unbearable. I don't ever want to go back there, not again. I would rather fight with you, argue with you, stumble with you, than live another day pretending I don't care. Because I do. More than I ever thought I could." The world seemed to fall quiet around us. My heart pounded, torn between caution and surrender. But in that moment, as his eyes held mine with a rawness that stripped away every defense, I realized something. Forgiveness wasn't weakness. It was a choice, a risk. And maybe love, real love, was always a risk. I took a slow breath, my tears softening into a trembling smile. "Michael, maybe we can try again. But this time, on different terms. Not yours, not mine. Ours." Relief flooded his face, so palpable it was almost radiant. He let out a shaky laugh, his own eyes glassy with unshed emotion. "Ours," he repeated, as if the word itself was a promise. And for the first time in weeks, I felt the weight on my chest lift. The silence between us was gone, replaced by something fragile, uncertain, but alive. Hope. The air between us felt fragile, trembling, as if the smallest misstep could shatter everything we had just rebuilt. I had spoken the words, "Maybe we can try again." But the truth was, my heart was still racing, unsure if I had just leapt into something dangerous or finally stepped into the place where I truly belonged. Michael stood so close I could feel the warmth radiating from his body, yet he hadn't touched me. He seemed to be waiting, letting the moment breathe, letting me decide how far I was willing to go. That, more than anything, softened me. This was not the man who had once pressed too hard, too fast. This was a man holding himself back, afraid to lose me again. "Emily," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "I don't want to mess this up, not again." His words disarmed me, the honesty in them, the fear, the vulnerability. It stripped away the last of my defenses. Slowly, almost without thinking, I lifted my hand and touched his arm. A simple gesture, but it was enough. His shoulders relaxed, his breath caught, and in that moment, the distance we had carried for weeks dissolved. I looked into his eyes and saw it there, everything he hadn't said, everything I had doubted, everything that had lived between us in silence. It was love, raw and imperfect, but real. And then, without another word, he leaned in. The kiss that followed was not the hesitant brush of lips we had shared weeks before, nor was it the rushed desire of a man eager for more. This kiss was something else entirely. It was slow, deliberate, reverent, an act of surrender, of apology, of forgiveness. When his lips touched mine, I felt the weight of the cold weeks lift from me, as though his kiss was erasing each wound he had left behind. His hands cupped my face gently, as if I were something precious he had almost lost, something he never wanted to risk again. I melted into him, my arms circling his shoulders, pulling him closer. The dam inside me broke, releasing the longing I had tried so hard to suppress. For weeks, I had dreamed of this closeness, ached for it, and now it was here, soft, consuming, undeniable. The kiss deepened, and I tasted more than desire. I tasted regret, sorrow, hope. I felt his silent vow pressed against my lips, that this time would be different, that he had learned what mattered. And though a part of me still carried scars, another part whispered that this was where healing began. When we finally parted, my forehead rested against his, both of us breathing hard, as if we had just crossed a great distance to find each other again. His voice was a whisper against my skin. "Emily, I love you. I've been a fool, but I love you." The words cracked something open inside me. I had longed to hear them, feared I never would. Tears welled in my eyes, but they were not the bitter tears of the past weeks. They were softer, lighter, tears of release, of hope. "I love you too," I whispered back, my voice trembling, "and I don't want to lose this again." He closed his eyes, pressing another gentle kiss to my lips, then to my forehead, his hands never leaving my face as if to anchor himself to me. "You won't," he murmured. "Not if I have anything to say about it. I'll spend every day proving it to you." We stood there in the dim quiet of the office lobby, long after everyone else had left, wrapped in a moment that felt timeless. For the first time in weeks, there was no ice, no silence, no distance. There was only us. That kiss was not just forgiveness, it was rebirth. And as I leaned against him, his arms tightening around me, I realized something I hadn't dared believe. Sometimes love doesn't crumble under mistakes. Sometimes it survives them, grows through them, and comes out stronger. That night, in his arms, I felt it, our souls meeting again, as if they had always known the way back. Looking back now, I see how fragile everything was, how easily what we had could have slipped through our fingers. One wrong word, one stubborn silence, and the story might have ended before it truly began. There were moments I almost gave up. Nights when I lay awake replaying his indifference, his cold eyes passing me in the office hallway, and I thought, maybe this is who he really is. Maybe I imagined everything else. But deep inside, a part of me refused to let go. It whispered that the fire I had seen in him was real, even if pride and fear had buried it. And I was right. The night he finally asked for forgiveness, something shifted, not just between us, but within me. I realized that love is not about perfection. It's not about always saying the right words or never stumbling. Love is about the choice we make, over and over, to come back. To fight for it, even when it's easier to walk away. Michael could have chosen pride. He could have chosen to keep pretending I didn't matter. But instead, he laid down his defenses. He confessed, he regretted, and in doing so, he gave me the one thing my heart had been aching for all along: respect. Respect for my boundaries, respect for who I am, respect for the kind of love I wanted, one not born of pressure or haste, but of patience, trust, and time. And I, too, had to make a choice. I could have closed my heart, punished him forever for his mistake. But forgiveness is also a form of strength. It doesn't erase the past, but it allows us to write a different future. When I think about that first kiss, the one in the bar, when time stood still, I know it was the spark that lit everything. But it was the second kiss, the kiss of forgiveness, that built the fire strong enough to last. Now, when I wake up each day and see him beside me, when he holds me as if he still can't quite believe I'm real, I feel the weight of that choice. The choice not to let fear win. The choice to honor love, but also respect. Sometimes, late at night, he whispers words I will never forget. Emily, thank you for being you, for standing your ground, for not giving up on me, even when I didn't deserve it. And every time I answer him silently in my heart, it wasn't just you I didn't give up on. It was us. Love is not always gentle. Sometimes it wounds before it heals. Sometimes it tests you, forces you to face the darkest parts of yourself. But when it survives, when it rises from silence, from mistakes, from regret, it becomes something unshakable. That is what we found. Between respect and love, we discovered the balance that saved us. He learned that love without respect cannot last, and I learned that respect without love leaves you lonely. Together, we chose both, and that choice changed everything. Have you ever faced that fragile moment between desire and respect? The kind of choice that could change everything. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes in true love. Your support helps us bring more stories of healing, forgiveness, and hope. And tell me in the comments, would you have made the same choice?